What's up, guys? Vinark MP back again with another episode of Father's Win. Thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate you guys. This episode is a special episode in that it is not like any other episode that I've done before. I know that there are men who watch this channel regularly now for insight on navigating family court. And I know it gets really entertaining when I drop these crazy courtroom videos and we get these crazy people trying to take away time or rights from dads, and we love seeing dads win. But this is also a channel where we're here to learn and we're here to grow. So if you are here for some drama, if you're here for some excitement, this isn't the episode for you. I'm going to tell you right now, I don't want to waste your time. Turn it off. Hit the next video. I promise you, you're going to enjoy it. But this video right here, this is for all my men out there who are going through family court right now, who are about to go through family court, or who are thinking about getting married, taking that big step to get married and have kids. I need you guys to really pay attention and understand what is going on in this country right now as it pertains to us men inside family court. What I did was I compiled as much information as I possibly could, and I know there's still more info out there, on why fathers repeatedly fail in family court. Why do we get the short end of the stick? There's historic merit to it. Like just 10 years ago, states started overturning their ideas that moms were the more reasonable parents. This is a very new phenomenon, guys, and the culture hasn't really taken over yet. So I'm going to use the help of two AI friends who are going to explain to us the history of fathers in family court and why it seems like we're losing. But because we're solutions-based, we're men. We're solutions-based people. There's also going to be a lot of information about what you do have going for you, advantage-wise, when you walk into that courtroom, when you're trying to fight for custody, when you're trying to get that child support off of you or just rearranged. Sit back, listen to this 25 minutes of pure game that I put together for you so you guys can better navigate family court. I'm not even coming back at the end, guys. Save this video, save this link to your nephews, your sons, your friends, your dads, your uncles, guys who are thinking about getting married. Share this. This is pertinent information. All right, guys. God bless. Catch you guys on the next one. Enjoy this episode of Father's Win.
Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. This time, we're going to be tackling how fathers fare in child custody cases in the U.S. I mean, it's something that I think a lot of people have opinions on. But we're really going to try to go beyond those surface level hot takes and actually get into the nitty gritty of what the research says, what the law says, and just really understand the complexities of this really important topic.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a multifaceted issue and one that deserves a very nuanced discussion. So I'm really glad we're doing this deep dive today.
Yeah, and I'm especially excited about some of the sources that we have for this one. We've got some legal precedents, research on custody awards. But there's this one study on fathers' parenting time across different states that's just mind-blowing.
Oh, yeah. That one's fascinating.
Yeah. It really opened my eyes to how much geography can actually influence a father's time with his kids.
And that's just one piece of the puzzle.
Yeah. I mean, before we even get to those geographical surprises, maybe we should kind of set the stage a bit. How did we even get to where we are now?
Right. A little historical context can be really helpful here. It wasn't that long ago that the legal system was heavily biased towards mothers in custody cases. And a lot of that had to do with, traditional gender roles.
Yeah, the father's the breadwinner and the mom's the caregiver.
Exactly. Fathers were primarily seen as the breadwinners and mothers as the primary caregivers.
And so the courts just automatically assumed that mom should get custody.
Pretty much, yeah. It wasn't always explicitly stated, but that was often the underlying assumption.
Wow. So not exactly an even playing field right from the start.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing with more stay-at-home dads now and just dual income families being the norm.
Yeah.
That's been challenged, right?
Oh, absolutely. There's definitely been a shift in societal norms, and that's reflected in the legal system as well. Thankfully, courts are moving away from those outdated stereotypes and moving towards this best interest of the child standard.
So that's less about who's the mom or who's the dad and more about what's actually best for the kid.
Exactly. It means looking at each parent's individual circumstances, capabilities, and what they can offer the child.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. But I'm curious, even with that shift, like, what are some of the reasons that fathers still might lose custody? Like, are there any, like, recurring themes in the cases that you've seen?
Yeah, there are definitely some common stumbling blocks, like even though it's evolving, that primary caregiver presumption can still be a hurdle. So if a father hasn't been, super hands-on with daily childcare during the relationship, he might face an uphill battle in court.
Right. It's like you have to prove that you weren't just, like, stepping up now because of the legal situation, but that you've always been, like, deeply involved.
Exactly. And then there are things like an unstable lifestyle, like if a father has inconsistent housing or finances, frequent job changes, things like that, those can raise red flags for a judge who's trying to decide, like, what the most stable environment for the kid is going to be.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I imagine, like, things like substance abuse or domestic violence are basically immediate deal breakers, right?
Unfortunately, yeah, you're right. Those are major red flags, even if the violence wasn't directed at the child. Any history of that raises serious concerns about a parent's ability to provide a safe and stable home.
Of course, of course.
Yeah.
And now we have to talk about something called parental alienation, right? That's where one parent, I guess, tries to manipulate the child against the other parent.
Right, exactly.
That sounds just incredibly damaging, like both for the kid and for the parent. What can a father even do if he's, like, facing that situation?
Well, the most important thing is documentation. Like, you really have to keep a detailed record of any attempts to, like, undermine the father-child relationship.
Yeah.
Whether it's negative comments about the father, limiting contact, or even outright lies,
So it's, like, kind of similar to what we were talking about before with, like, proving your involvement.
Right.
It's all about, like, building a solid case.
Yeah, evidence is crucial. And, as difficult as it might be, it's really important to try and maintain a positive, loving relationship with your child. Don't engage in the negativity or badmouth the other parent in return.
Just, like, rise above it.
Yeah, your focus should always be on the child's well-being and their emotional health.
Okay, so be the stable one.
Exactly.
Now, before we get into, like, what can actually strengthen a father's case, I do want to touch on something that our sources brought up, which is, like, the unique challenges for fathers of children born out of wedlock. What makes those situations particularly complex?
Well, for one thing, establishing legal paternity becomes like an essential first step, and that often involves DNA testing and can sometimes become like a really drawn-out process. And until that paternity is legally established, a father's rights are really limited.
So it's not even just, like, proving you're a capable parent. It's, like, first having to prove you're the father.
Right.
Wow.
And even after paternity is confirmed, there are the financial considerations. The father is usually obligated to pay child support, even if he doesn't have primary custody, which can add a significant financial strain.
Yeah, that's a lot to navigate.
It is.
Especially with, maybe some social stigma that still exists in some communities around that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about, like, some of the hurdles that fathers might face, but let's, like, shift gears now and talk about what can actually work in a father's favor during a custody case.
Sure. I think one of the most important things is being able to demonstrate a strong and consistent paternal bond. It's not just about saying you love your child, it's about showing it through your actions and your involvement in their life.
So, like, what kind of actions actually, like, carry the most weight in the eyes of the court?
Well, being actively involved in the child's daily life is huge. Attending school events, medical appointments, helping with homework, being there for bedtime routines, all those, like, everyday interactions really demonstrate a deeper level of commitment than just saying, I love my kid.
Yeah, it's like walking the walk, not talking the talk.
Right.
And I'm guessing documenting all of this is key, right?
Absolutely. Keeping records, whether it's photos or communication logs, or even notes from teachers or caregivers who can vouch for your involvement, can be really, really valuable. The more evidence you have to support your claims, the stronger your case is going to be.
Makes sense. So speaking of evidence, is there anything else that fathers should, like, keep in mind when they're building their case?
Yeah, I think another important factor is demonstrating good co-parenting skills. Even if there's tension with the mother, showing that you're willing to work together and put the child's needs first can go a long way.
So even if the relationship is, like, strained, showing that you can communicate respectfully and, like, make decisions together is important.
Right. Exactly. And sometimes there are legitimate concerns about the other parent's behavior, that might impact the child's well-being. And if that's the case, again, documentation is crucial.
It's like a recurring theme here. Document everything.
Yeah, it might seem tedious, but it can really make all the difference in court.
Yeah, because if there's like evidence of neglect or instability or anything that might put the kid at risk, that's going to be a huge factor for the judge, right?
Right, exactly.
So it's not just about showcasing your own strengths as a father, but also being prepared to like address any concerns about the other parent's ability to provide a safe and stable environment.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that societal norms are shifting, Courts are increasingly recognizing the vital role that fathers play in a child's life.
Okay, and that brings us to a really interesting point, right? Because we talked about in the beginning how location can play a role in this. I remember reading this statistic that fathers are awarded sole custody in about 18.3% of cases nationwide.
Yeah, it's a number that often surprises people, but it's important to remember that that's just sole custody. The landscape is much broader when you consider joint custody arrangements, which are becoming more and more common these days.
Right. So joint custody is a whole other can of worms. But that 18.3% figure, that actually fluctuates drastically from state to state. Like we have this study here from Custody Exchange, and it found that fathers' share of parenting time across the country is like literally all over the map.
Yeah, that's a fascinating study.
It is.
I think it really underscores how much geography can influence a father's time with his kids. And it raises important questions about like what societal or legal factors might be driving those disparities.
Right, because nationally, the average father receives about 35% of custody time. But in some states, it's like way higher or way lower. And what's really wild is that they found a correlation between political leanings and custody time.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Red states tend to award less parenting time to fathers compared to blue or even purple states. For example, Florida, which like aims for equal parenting time, sees fathers receiving around 50%. But in Tennessee, it's only 21.8%.
Wow, that's a huge difference.
It's massive.
Yeah.
And it's, that can have a profound impact on a child's life and on a father's relationship with their child.
Absolutely.
It makes you wonder, like, what is it about those different states, about the culture or the laws,
right,
that's leading to such different outcomes?
It's a great question and definitely something worth exploring further.
For sure. Okay, so before we go down that rabbit hole, I think it'd be helpful to give some practical advice for fathers who are, navigating this process. Like, what are some things they can do to present themselves effectively in court?
Yeah, I think preparation is key. You really want to focus on showcasing your active involvement in your child's life, providing concrete evidence of your participation in their daily routines, school activities, healthcare, everything. And as we've talked about, documentation is crucial.
Yeah, it's like building a portfolio of your parenting. Showing the judge that you're not just talking the talk, you're walking the walk.
Exactly. And remember, always prioritize the child's well-being. Make it clear that their needs come first, and demonstrate your willingness to co-parent effectively, even if you have disagreements with the other parent.
So even if the relationship is strained, showing that you can be the bigger person and communicate respectfully and make decisions together, that can make a big difference.
Exactly.
Okay, what else?
Well, gather strong character references, people who can speak to your parenting skills, your responsibility, your positive qualities. That can be really helpful in bolstering your case.
So that's like building a case for your character as much as your parenting.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And don't be afraid to address any concerns that the court might have. If there are issues in your past, like financial struggles, a period of instability, address them honestly and show how you've grown from them or overcome them.
So like transparency and a willingness to take responsibility for past mistakes, that can actually be a good thing.
It can be. It shows that you're self-aware and committed to personal growth.
Okay, so it sounds like what we've talked about so far is be involved, document everything, be organized, be honest, be willing to cooperate.
Yeah, I think those are all great takeaways.
Now, what about seeking professional help? Like if there are some personal issues that might be impacting your parenting.
I think that can be a really good thing, especially if you frame it as a positive step towards personal growth. It shows the court that you're committed to being the best parent you can be. It demonstrates a proactive approach to addressing any challenges you might be facing.
Okay, so it's not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of strength and willingness to work on yourself.
Exactly.
And of course, we can't forget about the importance of having a good lawyer throughout this process.
Absolutely. Having a skilled family law attorney on your side is essential. Navigating the legal complexities of custody cases requires expertise. And a good attorney can be your advocate, your guide, your strategist. They can help you anticipate potential issues, build a strong case, and present your arguments effectively in court.
So it's like having a coach in your corner
Right.
to help you navigate this, really high stakes game.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive.
Right.
We've talked about the historical context of custody cases, the unique challenges and advantages that fathers face, the complexities of cases involving children born out of wedlock.
We have.
We've started to unpack, like this surprising influence of geography. And honestly, it's a lot to process.
It is, and we still have some really important topics to tackle.
Yeah, we haven't even talked about parental alienation yet, or what to do if you think child support is being mismanaged.
Yeah.
Those are biggies.
We'll dive into those right after this. Okay, so let's get into those two really important issues that we kind of left hanging there. Parental alienation and what happens when child support is being mismanaged.
Right, because those are both things that we saw come up again and again in our research, and they can be incredibly challenging for fathers to deal with.
Absolutely, and unfortunately, they're not uncommon either.
So let's start with parental alienation. I mean, it's just heartbreaking to think that a parent would intentionally try to damage their child's relationship with the other parent. What kind of person does that?
It's definitely a tough situation to be in. And, it can be really hard to understand why someone would do that.
Yeah. So what can a father do if he's facing this, this awful situation?
Well, first and foremost, documentation is key.
Okay.
You really need to keep a detailed record of everything. Dates, times, specific conversations, any instances where the other parent is trying to undermine the father-child bond.
So, what kind of things are we talking about here?
It could be anything from, making negative comments about the father to the child to, limiting contact between the father and child, or even outright lies designed to turn the child against the father.
Wow, that's just awful.
It is, and it's really important to be able to prove that this is happening if you're going to take any legal action.
Right, because it's one person's word against another's.
Right. Exactly.
So you need to have that evidence to back up your claims.
Yeah, and as difficult as it might be, it's also really important to try and maintain a positive and loving relationship with your child.
Okay.
Don't engage in the negativity. Don't badmouth the other parent back to the child.
Right, don't stoop to their level.
Right. Your focus should always be on the child's well-being and emotional health.
So just, be the bigger person, be the stable one.
Exactly.
Now, what about seeking professional help? Could that be beneficial in these situations?
Absolutely. I mean, a family law attorney who specializes in parental alienation can be invaluable in these cases.
Yeah.
They can advise you on your legal options, help you navigate the court system, and potentially even pursue, contempt of court charges if the other parent is violating court orders.
Oh, wow. So legal action is a possibility.
It is, but it's often a last resort. I think it's always best to try and resolve these things amicably if possible.
Right, of course. Nobody wants to drag this out in court if they don't have to.
Exactly. And therapy can also be incredibly helpful in these situations, both for the father, to help him cope with the emotional strain of alienation, but also for the child to help them address the damage that's been caused.
Yeah, because that's got to be really confusing for a kid to be caught in the middle of all that.
It is, and a therapist can provide tools and strategies for navigating those complex emotions and, building healthy communication patterns.
Okay, so it's not just about the legal stuff. It's about, the emotional and psychological well-being of everyone involved.
Right, exactly.
So for any fathers out there who are facing parental alienation, just know that you're not alone, and there are steps you can take to protect your relationship with your child.
And there are resources available to help you. Don't hesitate to reach out to friends, family, support groups, anyone who can offer emotional support and guidance during this difficult time.
All right, so now let's shift gears and talk about child support mismanagement. What happens if a father suspects that the mother isn't actually using the money for the child's needs?
Okay, so in these situations, again, evidence is going to be your best friend.
Okay.
Gather any documentation you can that shows how the money's being spent.
So receipts, bank statements, that kind of thing?
Exactly. If you can show a clear pattern of the money being used for things that are not benefiting the child,
right,
that's going to significantly strengthen your case.
So it's not about scrutinizing every single purchase. It's about demonstrating a consistent disregard for the child's well-being. Now, as with parental alienation, I'm guessing that communication is a good first step, right?
Absolutely. Try to address your concerns with the mother directly. Sometimes a simple conversation can clear up misunderstandings or lead to a more responsible use of the funds.
Right. It's always better to try and resolve things amicably before involving the courts.
I agree.
But what if those attempts fail? Like, what recourse does a father have then?
Well, if talking to the mother directly doesn't work, you can contact the child support agency in your jurisdiction.
Okay.
They have the authority to investigate the situation and potentially take action to make sure the money is being used appropriately.
So there are systems in place to deal with this.
There are.
And to protect the child.
Yes. And if the mismanagement is severe or persistent, you can actually petition the court to modify the child support order.
Oh, okay.
That could involve requesting a reduction in payments or, in extreme cases, even seeking supervised visitation or a court-appointed guardian to oversee the child's finances.
Well, so there are a lot of options on the table.
There are, and it's important to remember that the court's primary concern is the child's well-being.
Of course.
They want to make sure that the child's needs are being met, both emotionally and financially.
Right, and sometimes that means stepping in and making some tough decisions.
It does.
Now, I know this is a lot to take in, and it can be really overwhelming for fathers who are going through this.
It can be.
So what advice would you give to those fathers who are feeling, maybe discouraged or just overwhelmed by this whole process?
Well, I would say focus on the reason you're doing this. You're doing this because you love your child, and that love is your greatest strength. It's going to be your motivation to keep going, even when things get tough.
Yeah, it's a good point.
And remember, the journey might be difficult, but the rewards of having a loving and fulfilling relationship with your child are immeasurable. It's a fight worth fighting.
That's a really powerful message.
Yeah.
And I think it's a perfect segue into a final thought that I want to leave our listener with. We've talked about how more and more states are moving towards this idea of equal parenting time. So what do you think that tells us about the evolving role of fathers in society?
That's a really interesting question. I think this shift towards shared parenting could signal a really fundamental change in how we view fatherhood. It suggests a move away from that traditional model of fathers as solely breadwinners towards a more nuanced understanding of their capacity for caregiving and emotional support.
Yeah, it's like society is finally catching up to what a lot of fathers have known all along, which is that they have a vital role to play in their children's lives. Not just as providers, but as active caregivers and emotional anchors.
Right, and I think it's a really hopeful sign of progress.
I agree.
It speaks to a growing recognition of the importance of both parents in a child's development and well-being, and it suggests that the legal system is starting to reflect those changing societal norms.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. We've explored the historical context of child custody, the challenges and advantages that fathers face, the complexities of parental alienation, child support mismanagement, and we've even touched on these evolving societal perceptions of fatherhood.
It's been a really comprehensive discussion.
It has, and I think it's important to remember that while the legal landscape can be really complex,
It can be.
at the heart of all of this is the love between a parent and a child.
Absolutely.
That's something worth fighting for. So we hope this deep dive has given our listeners some valuable insights and a better understanding of all the factors that are at play in child custody cases.
I hope so too.
But, as always, there's more to explore, right?
Of course.
This is just the tip of the iceberg.
Exactly.
So if you're interested in learning more about this topic,
Yeah.
definitely do your own research, consult with legal professionals if you need to.
Yeah. Good advice.
And most importantly, keep those conversations going. Because the more we talk about these issues, the more awareness we raise.
Yeah.
And the better equipped we'll be to create a system that truly serves the best interests of children and families.
Well said.
Right. On that note, it's time to wrap up this deep dive.
Okay.
Until next time, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep those conversations going.
It's interesting to think about how these changing views of fatherhood that we've been talking about might actually show up in the courtroom. We talked about how fathers need to present a positive image to the court, but what does that actually look like,
I think a big part of it is just showing that you're committed to your child's well-being, not just saying it, but through your actions and your choices.
Right, actions speak louder than words.
Exactly. You want to demonstrate that you're a reliable, responsible, and nurturing presence in their life.
Okay, so let's break that down a little more. What are some key things a father should keep in mind when he's in those custody hearings? Well, we've touched on this already, but preparation is key. Be ready to show the court concrete evidence of your involvement in your child's life. Bring documentation about your participation in their daily routines, school activities, healthcare appointments, like all of it.
So it's like presenting a portfolio of your fatherhood to the judge, showing them that you're not just talking the talk, you're walking the walk.
Exactly.
Okay, so what else can fathers do to make their case stronger?
Well, you always want to keep the child's needs as your top priority. Make sure that's clear to the court and show that you're willing to cooperate with the other parent, even if you don't always see eye to eye.
Right, like show that you can be the bigger person and put the child's needs first.
Exactly.
That's got to make a difference.
It does.
Okay, what about character witnesses?
Oh, those are huge. Having people who can talk about your parenting skills, your responsibility, your positive qualities, that can be really valuable.
Yeah, it's like adding credibility to your case,
Yeah.
right? Like, it's one thing for you to say, hey, I'm a great dad, but it's another for other people to back that up.
Right.
Okay, so we've got be prepared, be cooperative, get some good character references.
Mm-hmm.
What about if there's some things in a father's past that might, raise some eyebrows with the court?
Well, honesty is always the best policy. If there are things you're not proud of, like maybe financial problems or a period of instability, address them head on and show how you've grown from those experiences.
So transparency and taking responsibility for past mistakes can actually be a good thing.
It can. It shows that you're self-aware and that you're committed to personal growth.
Okay, and practically speaking, you've got to be organized, right?
Oh, absolutely. Make sure you have all your ducks in a row, all your documentation in order, school records, medical records, calendars, logs, anything that supports your claims.
It's like you're making a presentation to the judge, right?
Exactly.
You got to have all your evidence lined up.
You do.
And of course, we can't forget about legal representation.
Oh, right. That's crucial. Having a good family law attorney on your side throughout this whole process is essential.
Like, what kind of difference can a lawyer actually make in a custody case?
Well, navigating the legal system can be tricky, and custody cases are particularly complex. A good lawyer can be your advocate, your guide, your strategist. They can help you build a strong case, anticipate any potential problems, and present your arguments effectively in court.
So they're like your coach in this really high-stakes game.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Okay, so finding the right lawyer is important.
Absolutely. And, there are even lawyers who specialize in representing fathers in custody cases.
Oh, wow. So it's like a whole subspecialty within family law.
It is.
That's interesting. Now, what about therapy? Like, what if a father is going through some personal stuff that might be impacting his parenting?
I think seeking professional help can be a really positive step.
Okay.
It shows the court that you're taking your mental health seriously and that you're committed to being the best parent you can be.
Right. It's like another way to show that you're proactive and taking responsibility.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about a lot in this deep dive. The history of child custody, the challenges and advantages for fathers, parental alienation, child support, mismanagement, even those shifting societal views of fatherhood.
It's been a lot to cover.
It really has. But hopefully our listeners are walking away with a better understanding of what all goes into these cases.
I hope so.
The legal system can be really confusing, especially with something as emotionally charged as child custody.
It can be.
So it's important to stay informed and to seek out professional help when you need it.
I agree completely.
And remember, ultimately, the goal is to do what's best for the child.
Always.
So if you're a father going through this process, know that you're not alone and that there are resources available to support you. Keep learning. Keep advocating for yourself and for your child.
That's great advice.
Well, I think that about wraps it up for this deep dive.
It does.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. And until next time, keep exploring these important issues and keep those conversations going.
One dad at a time, fathers win.